Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Rebecca Troy, owner and founder of Retrain the Dyslexic Brain. And today we are coming on to do another live graduate case study. So if you've been with us for a little while, you know that we do these every other week to highlight client graduates from the program because I think it's really inspiring. I know that dyslexia can be a very difficult journey for children and families to go through. And so I think the more that we tell the stories of success and kids who have done truly amazing things as a result of being in this program, I think the better. So today we're going to celebrate Brittany, an 8-year-old girl who went through our program last spring. She, I think, started just after Thanksgiving and she finished up in the spring. So after just, 5 months of being in the program, she went from being 64% accurate in phonological awareness. So her brain was really, really not hearing all of the sounds and words. She would try to hear a sound and connect it with a letter, and it was inaccurate nearly half of the time to being 93% accurate within that time frame. Her reading on the wide range achievement test 5 went from the 47th percentile to the 94th percentile. So just massive, massive gains in her ability to decode words and work her way through that sound symbol relationship. Her spelling scores on the wide range achievement test 5 went from the 19th percentile to the 70th within those months. With an additional 27 words. And these were very, very difficult words that she was able to spell phonetically correctly. So in those cases, she was often off by just a letter or two. And had she had those spelling patterns correct as well, that would have put her at the 99th percentile for spelling. So, when we spoke with mom, she had a whole ton of things to celebrate, but we pulled just some of the quotes that we thought were really kind of highlighting her case. She said, in less than a year, things went from Brittany being recommended to be on an IEP, and the school actually said, you know what, she's going to need a side-by-side para to support her. And mom and dad just didn't feel okay with that. She said, I don't want her to be on an IEP. Maybe that's from some of the trauma or the way that I experienced special education or my perception of it from when I was in school, but I really don't want that for Brittany. And she doesn't want to have a side-by-side para support because she believes that that's embarrassing and it causes her to feel different from her peers. And so instead of doing those things, they dove in and said, we want to take control of this and support her to have a different experience. And so in the 5 months that she was within the program, she went from that being her reality to now in January, a month from now, she is literally being dismissed from all reading support in the school and she's being fully integrated into the classroom. So, you want to talk about a life-altering, life-changing experience for Brittany. Truly, it's too extreme. Had she not dug in, had she not done anything about it, it's highly likely that she would be experiencing the same exact thing and more of that. And so we'll talk more about that in just a moment. But, she's doing everything with her classmates. She's performing just as well, if not better, in some of these cases than the kids in her classroom. So I think from struggling to read and write well to reading chapter books for a book report that she couldn't put down. And that's something we'll share. It's truly, truly life-changing. Mom said, who would have thought that all of this could have happened within a year? She's having fun and her confidence is massively different. So let's kind of dive in. Again, if you haven't met us before, again, I mentioned I'm Dr. Rebecca Troy, and Retrain the Dyslexic Brain is a program that allows you to employ cutting-edge neuroscience techniques to actually reorganize how your child's brain is responding to language, which makes reading and spelling exponentially improved within just a few months. And so these results have massive increases in confidence and independence with reading and spelling, which are, I would say, two of the most sought after emotions that parents really want their kids to have. So by giving you these advanced dyslexia interventions to you and coaching you through that, bringing it into your home, it makes it accessible for you and practical for your family. So that's what we're talking about here. This is the program that Brittany and Leah went through. So just, so you have that background and awareness that that's what we're talking about. So at the beginning of these case studies, I always take the time to talk about the neurology of dyslexia because I think it's really, really important for your awareness as a parent. So when you look at this brain scan here, this is an fMRI image of two kids. One is a person with a neurotypical brain for reading, so a non-dyslexic person, and the other is a person with dyslexia. And so what you can see is that there are physical brain differences between these two people. And so what's obvious is that in this back part of the brain here that we call the occipital lobe, there is activity in a neurotypical person, and there is not activity at all for a person with dyslexia. And so what that looks like is, your visual system isn't activated for language. And so when words come in, your brain literally doesn't know how to respond, which is why you end up with letters that might be reversed or backwards, or you might add in letters that don't belong, or you should have had letters that you don't, or maybe you missed an entire syllable. And so there can be a lot of these really, really common traits that happen because of the way that the brain doesn't respond to language. And so again, the other major area that we notice a difference is in the parietal temporal lobes, which is going to have a lot of how we're hearing and processing language. So you'll notice that the person without dyslexia has a lot of activity here, whereas the person with dyslexia does not. So here's another way to look at that, this time through an EEG. So again, the typical reader has got activity here and here. And so, this is during a language task, but again, the reader with dyslexia does not. So you're noticing that there is a significant neurological difference between these two profiles. But the most important thing that I want you to get from this is that the brain is dynamic. It is capable of changing over time. And I think that there was a while where we really thought that the brain was static, that it's this immovable thing that cannot change. You're either this way or you're that way, and it does not have any kind of impact over a lifetime. But we know that that's simply not true. And with more and more advanced technology, we continue to see imaging that proves otherwise. So when you do things repetitively, when you leverage the power of neuroplasticity, you can actually change the way that the brain is responding. And so that's really what we're up to here, is changing the way that Brittany was responding to language so that sight and sound are connected together, so that she has the ability to read and decode through words, so that she has the ability to spell with ease. And so I would like to now kind of transition into sharing Brittany's personal story. So we interviewed Brittany's mom, Leah. And I think, definitely talking about the data is powerful, but it's also, in my opinion, more powerful to hear from the humans and the real lives that this impacted. And so as you're listening to this, I would bet that some of you see yourselves in this story, and hopefully it inspires you to know what's possible for you too. So in preschool, Brittany could do the alphabet, but she was always flipping letters. And so something that really kind of cued her mom was that she could completely invert long words. And while she said that was cool and everything, I knew that there had to be something going on there for her because it wasn't typical. And so she made it through kindergarten, not hugely behind, but by first grade, she was not progressing. And the school noticed, the teacher noticed, so they placed her in title reading services. And she made very, very slow progress. And so that's really typical. We find that many, many clients that get support do grow, but the growing is so exponentially slow, and it's certainly not doing anything to catch them up to their peers. And so the school said, we really want to put her on this IEP. We want to have a side-by-side para for her. And mom said things just didn't sit right. So her husband's family has a history of dyslexia. And when they started second grade and they still were not making progress, even after Title I all of first grade and the work that they had done in kindergarten, working with her every single night, she said, I knew that we had to do something differently, but I didn't know what to do. And I think that that's a really common symptom for a lot of families. It's very overwhelming to find out that your child might be really struggling with something, and there's so many options, and how do I know what to do? And so she'd been following us on social media for about a year at this point, and she said, we just got to this moment where we said we knew we needed some help. So she made the decision to reach out to us, and we took her in as one of our clients. And so she said one of her biggest motivators for moving forward was Brittany's confidence. So she believed that if you lose your confidence and you can't be with your peers, it's hugely impactful and not in a positive way. Also, she knew that in third grade, there was going to be this massive shift in expectations. So Brittany was going to go from learning to read to reading to learn. And so the type and the quantity of text was going to shift. And she said, why not just dig in second grade? We've got to do something differently. This is not working. We're not making any progress. And so she felt like, giving herself the tools, being equipped, doing this herself, put her in the control seat where she would be able to gain some semblance of control over the situation and be able to make the change for her daughter herself. So she started the program, and she said, just like you said, within 3 weeks, we noticed a huge difference in her performance. The teachers started asking her, what's happening? Are you working with her at home? What are you doing? What program are you using? Her confidence was growing. Things were really starting to click. Mom said, was it easy the whole time? No, but we stayed with it consistently, at least 5 days a week. So I think it's important to recognize that this is a commitment. And with any commitment, whether it's a weight loss journey or a food journey, there's always times where maybe at the beginning you're really excited, but 11 weeks in, 15 weeks in, it's a totally different animal. And so part of the reason that we have coaching and mindset coaching as part of this process is that we really want you to stick with it and stay with the results. And so Leah definitely did that. Being consistent is obviously a part of neuroplasticity as well. And so her results were with Brittany working at least 5 days a week. And she enjoyed it too. So the activities were good, and that she didn't feel like she was reading at first. They were different. Her teacher started reporting that, she was the first person to raise her hand when there was a big word written on the board. So obviously that gives her confidence because she's participating in the class. She's able to do the things that other kids in her classroom could do. And so that felt to her like she was able to belong and participate. So huge changes in confidence for her. And now that she's in third grade, so we didn't connect with her to do an interview right away. So she is in third grade now. She said, oh my goodness, the changes in third grade that I thought were going to happen, they weren't kidding. And so, she is having to read 3 full paragraphs with no pictures to answer one question. And she has to do that 10 times in a row, pretty much every day. She said, I have no idea what this year would have been like for her or for me had we not done this program. I probably would have been impossible. And when I think about the emotions and the meltdowns and the refusal and the tears that would have come from trying to get through academics this year, like I can't be grateful enough that we dug in and did the work, because she is, the expectations have kicked up a notch, and like probably 10 notches, and she's still doing it to the point where they're going to dismiss her from any reading support at all. So the teacher saw a huge difference. Mom and dad saw a huge difference. Grandma and grandpa saw a huge difference in the words that she was able to read on her own. Her reading data in Title I was also progressing right along with the program. So they saw the data transfer in other places. So they were tracking her data and progress at school. And as she was progressing through the program, the data just kept getting better and better and better and better. And that's after multiple years of it really not changing at all. So recently, the teacher, classroom teacher, the Title I person, and the principal met with the family, and they said, you know what, right now she's just working on reading a paragraph each day to increase her speed right now. And that's typical. When we reorganize how the brain responds to language, it can do it, and it can do that accurately, but it might be a little bit at a slower rate than others until you kind of work that fluency piece out. But that's what she's working on right now. Um, and in January, they plan to phase her out of all reading intervention at that semester time. They believe that she can be fully integrated into the classroom without any support. So mom said it was so positive for her to be able to gain some control over the situation, to be in charge and make a difference in her daughter's life and see the change for herself. She said, because I was involved and embedded in this process, I was able to go directly to the teacher and share things that I was seeing firsthand. So I was going to see that every little area that was a struggle for her, I knew about, and I was going to make sure that we were really getting it and that it was mastered before she moved on. And so I came away with a greater understanding of the process that your brain has to go through to really get this. I gained empathy for my daughter. She said, I did not struggle with reading, so it was difficult for me to really know what Brittany was going through. And so knowing what I know now from Brittany, I'm also able to think about my two younger children who, now that I know what to look for, I'm already noticing some similarities and I know what to do. So that's a huge thing because, obviously dyslexia is highly heritable. And so the likelihood of having multiple children with dyslexia is high. And so she's in a beautiful place where she already knows what to do. And the way that we structure our program is that once the family has become a client, you do have the ability to put other children in through the program. So she's going to do that likely with this second child because she's already noticing the traits. Mom said she had a goal that she was going to be able to open up the world for Brittany. And even in the middle of the program, when she started reading billboards and signs, it was absolutely huge for us. She surpassed her goal and then some. And then, taking it to the night before I interviewed her, she said she was up reading a mystery chapter book for a book report and she couldn't put it down. So she let her stay up later than she normally would to finish reading this mystery chapter book for her book report. And she said, who would have thought a year later that this would have been us? Brittany's actually having fun. We didn't even have to work for a whole year. How beautiful is that? She said, I realized that this program was a leap of faith for us and maybe not the prescription that's always given, but it massively changed her abilities and her confidence. And I think that that's so important to share because there are programs that have been around for decades that are known. And so people, I think, are really quick to recommend that as the best possible next step. And what we found in our years of working with clients is that many, 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 many of our clients have already done years of those interventions unsuccessfully. And so when you address the root cause of the issue, which is the fact that the brain is not responding to language the way that we want it to be, and you kind of reorganize how that's functioning, you can have a massively different result in just a few months. And so mom said it gave me the tools to support her without me having to use a computerized program. And instead of investing money in a diagnosis that we really didn't need to tell us that there was a problem, I invested instead in a solution to do something about it. And so I think that's another great point to mention is that Brittany didn't even have a dyslexia diagnosis. And mom said we didn't need that for me to know that there was a massive problem. I mean, she was not progressing in her reading. She wasn't growing. They were talking about an IEP. They were talking about having a para sit next to her every day. She was losing in her confidence. Like, what more data do I possibly need to say we need to do something about this? And so I just think that that's an important point to make, that sometimes it's helpful to have the diagnosis, especially if you have other questions that you need answered, but you don't always have to have it. And I would say that, in fact, a good 35 to 40% of our clients do not, because they know without a shadow of a doubt that they are experiencing a major life-altering problem that they would very much like to solve. So with that, let's kind of dive into the data piece so that I can show you what actually happened to Brittany's data as a result of being in this course for about 5 months. So as I mentioned before, she had a massive change in how her brain was able to hear and respond to words. And so phonological awareness is when we don't even have letters in front of you. That's the brain's ability to kind of hear and respond to sounds. So before she started, again, it was just a little bit better than half of them correct to, she got 2 wrong. And, the ones that she missed were barely missed. And so massive, massive changes in how her brain was responding there. Again, the reading scores making huge jumps, spelling scores, huge jumps. So I want to show you from a statistical standpoint what that actually looks like. So again, this is, going from 15 errors to 3. And then I want to talk you through the normal distribution curve and statistically what happens. So what you'll see here is typical development and what we would call the normal distribution curve. So you'll see in the middle, there's this red line, which represents the 50th percentile or average. So I want to kind of talk about the difference between the red line and the blue line here, because we know that in a typical school year, academic year, you go to first grade, you end first grade, you go to fourth grade, you end fourth grade. We expect that kids are going to grow. And researchers have actually measured the amount of growth that is typical during that time. And they found that it's 0.3 of a standard deviation. So basically what that means is, in an entire school year, a typical kid would go from the red to the blue. But what often happens for kids with dyslexia is they grow less than that. They are making minimal, if any, progress, and that continues to happen year over year over year. And so when kids who are classically behind only grow a teeny tiny bit, the gap widens and widens and widens between the child and their peers. And so what you need to do is close the gap and try to do an intervention that is going to massively change the way that the results look. And so when we talk about statistical significance, this green line here is what we would call a moderate effect, knowing that the intervention had a moderate effect on the child's performance. And this orange one up here is what we would call statistical significance. We know that whatever the intervention was, it had a statistically significant impact on the child's results. They grew almost a full standard deviation from the treatment. So that's kind of what we're talking about when we look at statistics. So now I want to show you Brittany's data. And I know that this might be a little bit nerdy, but this is super, super powerful and something that we are very, very proud of. So I want to show you what it means to close the gap. So before Brittany started with us, she was here at the red dot, and this orange, or excuse me, the yellow one here is where she might have grown if she grew a typical amount in an entire academic year. If this program would have made her grow a statistically significant amount, meaning we know with certainty that this program had a positive impact on her reading achievement, she would have gone to this tannish brown line here. Brittany actually made 2 standard deviations of growth in 5 months, which, I mean, when we talk about educational statistics, that's pretty much unheard of to make that massive of a growth in that interval. But here's what it really means on Brittany's terms. She went from performing here, and in an academic year, she might have gone to here, to massively accelerating her growth and closing the gap between herself and her peers. And the same thing happened in spelling. So when she started, she was at the 19th percentile. So she was here at this red dot. Again, if she would have grown that typical amount in an entire academic year, she would have gone to this yellow one. If the program had statistically significant results and impact on her spelling, she would have gone here to this brown one, but she went an entire standard deviation beyond that and ended at the 70th percentile. Again, massively changing what an entire school year would have been. And again, this was in half a school year. So not even an entire year. She doubled, maybe even doubled in half her results from what a typical kid would have done in a school year. And this one out here is, as I mentioned at the beginning, she had an additional 27 items that she spelled phonetically correctly. She had all of the sounds there, but they were off in the spelling by 1 or 2 letters. And so we couldn't give her those correct. And so had she had those right, she would have been at the 99th percentile for her spelling. So again, the big point is this is what it means to have an intervention that closes the gap, and that really matters. So as we interviewed Leah, I think it's important to really not only celebrate what she had to say, but celebrate her as a mom, because this program does not work unless we have a partnership. So we can have the best program, the best, the best conditions to reorganize the brain, but it doesn't happen unless someone on the opposite side is doing the work. And so Leah remained consistent, and she completed the work no less than 5 days a week for 10 to 20 minutes a day. So it's not forever, it's not completely impossible in terms of time frame, but it does require commitment and it requires consistency. And so Leah absolutely did that, and that's why she has these results. She maintained a positive attitude for her daughter, and she held the belief that she was able to do anything that she put her mind to. So again, when we talk about learning, there is a human element to that. And so every time that you come to the table, if you're kind of punished or demeaned for not getting the right result or making mistakes, it does have a negative impact on how you learn. And so Leah consistently maintained a positive attitude so that her daughter could grow. She remained coachable throughout the process. So it is imperative that you receive our coaching throughout this process. In order for you to get those top-notch results, you have to be committed to doing what we ask you to do and remaining coachable, which she absolutely was. And she was willing to dig in to get a solution, even though she didn't have a diagnosis. She was committed to taking action and getting results. So I think that there's a certain level of advocacy that she just took on as an identity, knowing that, no, I don't have a diagnosis. No, I don't know the insides of this program, but I've been following them long enough. I see every other week that they're consistently coming back with a kid every single time that is making these life-changing results. We are in this place where we cannot afford to have another academic year pass by without any change. We have to do something. We're diving in. And so I just want to honor her for that, because that does take risk. That does take faith, and she absolutely did that for her daughter. So kudos to you, Leah. She said my goal was to open up the world for her, and we did exactly that. So amazing, amazing case. Again, super, super proud of these clients. And I want to celebrate all of our clients because this is typical. So when we were talking about like, what's the value of the program itself. So again, when I mentioned this 0.3, that's what growth is in a typical year from the beginning of the school year to the end of the school year. Again, this is that how much you grow in a program that is statistically significantly giving you better results. This is our average client growth from our graduates and Retrain the Dyslexic Brain. And we're super proud of that. So we know that the system works, but what we don't always know is how the family is going to implement that and whether or not they're going to be serious about getting a result. So it's a partnership and it matters. So if you want to dig more into educational statistics and everything that I was saying was really interesting to you, please feel free to kind of dig in here. So John Hattie is a researcher who has done a meta-analysis, which means studies of all of the things that are the most effective to impact student achievement and learning. And what I want to show you is like when you look at the standard deviations, like 0.8, 0.7, 1.2, 1.3, 1.5, our standard deviations are like up here. They're like 2.5, 2, 1.7. So we're super proud of the impact and the ability to close the gap that we've had for clients. And here's why that's important. When you don't close the gap, your child will inevitably miss out on opportunities. So whether that is, hey, you don't get to take this elective class, or you don't get to go to recess, or you don't get to be participating in your classroom with everybody else because you have to go over here and you have to do this intervention, or you can't take this club, or you can't get this job, or, inevitably there will be opportunities that you will miss by not closing the gap. There will be current and ongoing struggles. Those things are not going to go away unless you dig in and really do something about it. There's future opportunities that you may miss, and I think it's also important to acknowledge that there are other people outside of the child with dyslexia that suffer because of this. So if you are a parent that sits down nightly with your child to do homework, that is a very, very difficult thing to continue to do for both of you. There are tears, there's frustration, there's, struggle and conflict. And so closing the gap, getting massive results in a short amount of time is critical because it allows you to have an improved academic performance. It allows you to increase your self-esteem and confidence. It gives you better mental health and greater access to opportunities. So thank you so much for participating in today's case study. We love being able to do these. We are going to be doing another one in 2 weeks. Where we will actually be doing like a year-end recap. We will celebrate all of the clients that we have done a review on this entire year, which I think is just going to be super fun. But if you're listening and you're someone who is still not sure, and maybe you're like Leah and you don't want to go through the full assessment battery and the diagnosis and all of those things, you can absolutely participate in our dyslexia discovery workshop or get our dyslexia screener, and that's 20 minutes long. Like it's not over and over again. It's not requiring you to drive a couple of hours to a center. It's not requiring thousands of dollars. It's a very low cost way to, within 20 minutes, know with certainty if it's likely you're dealing with dyslexia or not. So please let us know, comment, screener below this video if you need access to that, and we will help you to gain that information so that you can clarify that for yourself. In addition, if you are a family who has been classically struggling with getting results and you have done similar to Leah and Brittany, all kindergarten she was in intervention, all of first grade she was in an intervention, and starting second grade, like Leah said, oh my goodness, we're here again and it's November and we still haven't seen any movement. We cannot keep beating our head against the wall. Let us know, and we offer complimentary sessions. So we call them breakthrough sessions, and you have the opportunity to meet with our team to see if you are a fit to work with us. And so feel free to comment support below the video, and we would be happy to get in touch with you to see if, again, this is a fit for you to work with us. So thanks again for being here, and we look forward to seeing you again in a couple of weeks. Bye, everyone.